So have you ever actually stopped to wonder what keeps a skydiver from just accelerating forever? Or, what invisible hand is physically gluing a stuntman to an upside-down vertical loop? I want you to take a second and try to access your own bodily memories of extreme motion. Think about the feeling of the wind roaring past your ears in a free fall, or that heavy, crushing sensation in your chest when a car takes a sharp turn just a little too fast. Today, we're going to look really closely at those visceral, physical phenomena to understand the extreme forces at play.
Welcome to this explainer on force and motion. Today, we are decoding the invisible rules that govern human extremes. We're taking the raw data, the physics of friction, drag, and circular motion, and unpacking exactly what happens when bodies are pushed to their absolute limits. Let's take a look at our flight plan.
Here's our telemetry checklist for today. We've got 1. The hidden world of friction, 2. Microscopic chaos, specifically cold welding, 3. Drag force and terminal speed, 4. Uniform circular motion, 5. Centripetal force in action, and finally, 6. Defying gravity with vertical loops.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the hidden world of friction. Take a look at this quote straight from our source material. If friction were totally absent, we could not get an automobile to go anywhere, and we could not walk. It's kind of wild to think about, right? I mean, we usually think of friction as a total nuisance, something that just rubs things down and robs our car engines of like 20% of their fuel efficiency. But without this resistive force, you couldn't even hold a pencil. Woven cloth would just spontaneously fall apart, and every knot you've ever tied would literally slip undone. Friction is the very thing that allows us to move, to build, to basically exist as we know it. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, there are 2 distinct phases to this force. Picture yourself trying to push a ridiculously heavy crate across a room. You push, but nothing happens. It doesn't budge. That is static friction. It perfectly matches your applied force, growing as you push harder, right up until a maximum breakaway limit. Then, suddenly, the crate gives way and slides. At that exact moment, static friction is overwhelmed, and it's replaced by kinetic friction. And here is the absolutely crucial point. Kinetic friction is a weaker, constant force. That is exactly why it takes way more effort to break a heavy object loose than it does to keep it sliding across the floor.
Which brings us to part 2, microscopic chaos and cold welding.
But why does that breakaway limit even exist in the first place? Welcome to the microscopic chaos of cold welding. Even if a piece of metal looks perfectly, beautifully flat to your naked eye, if you zoom all the way into the atomic scale, it's jagged. It's totally chaotic. The source text has this amazing analogy. It describes bringing 2 ordinary surfaces together as being like taking the Alps of Switzerland, turning them completely upside down, and just smashing them down onto the Alps of Austria. Because only the highest microscopic peaks actually touch, the pressure there is absolutely immense, and these atomic high points instantly cold weld. They bond together into a single piece of metal.
So when you finally push hard enough to hit that breakaway limit on the crate, you are literally, and I mean literally, tearing these microscopic atomic welds apart. As the object slides, there's this continuous, rapid reforming and tearing of chance contacts. Now, this alternate sticking and slipping of cold welds is responsible for that awful, annoying squeal of a skidding car tire. But astonishingly, it's the exact same microscopic physics that produces the beautiful, captivating sound of a bow being drawn across a violin string. Crazy, right?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit for part 3, drag force and terminal speed.
Whenever there is relative motion between a fluid, like air, and a blunt body, that body experiences a drag force that opposes its motion. Basically, the faster you go, the harder the air pushes back. But human athletes can actually manipulate the math here. Look at this downhill speed skier. She's riding in what's called the egg position. By crouching all the way down, she is intentionally minimizing her effective cross-sectional area. She is literally hacking the drag force equation to cheat the wind and achieve some seriously terrifying speeds.
Now, what happens if you're falling straight down? As you fall through the air from rest, your speed increases, and therefore that upward drag force increases right along with it. Eventually, that upward push perfectly balances the downward pull of gravity. And bam! At that exact moment, your acceleration hits 0. You stop speeding up and just fall at a constant rate, which we call terminal speed. Let's look at the data to put that into perspective. A typical skydiver maxes out at about 60 meters per second. A baseball hits around 42, and a tiny raindrop, just 7 meters per second.
Moving on to part 4, uniform circular motion.
This represents one of the most counterintuitive concepts in all of physics. If a particle travels around a circle at a perfectly constant speed, it is still accelerating. Wait, what? How is that possible?
Well, remember, acceleration isn't just about a change in speed, it's a change in velocity, and velocity includes your direction. Since your direction is continuously changing to stay on that circular path, you are constantly accelerating. And that acceleration is always directed radially inward, right towards the center of the circle, powered by a required inward pull known as centripetal force.
Let's see this out in the real world, in Part 5, Centripetal Force in Action.
Let's bring those mathematical vectors back to a visceral reality for a second. Imagine you're in the back seat of a car taking a sharp, flat turn way too fast. You slide, and you get jammed hard against the car door, right? You feel completely compressed? Well, the centripetal force keeping you in that circle is actually the friction of the tires on the flat road. Now, if that road were a banked curve instead, the normal force of the angled track would also help push you toward the center, which allows the car to take the turn even faster. But contrast both of those with an astronaut in the orbiting space shuttle, floating weightlessly. In all these scenarios, you're in uniform circular motion. But up in the shuttle, the centripetal force is Earth's gravity, pulling you radially inward, acting on your entire body uniformly, which is exactly what creates that sensation of weightlessness. Now, we absolutely have to bust a massive physics myth right here. As the text states, a centripetal force is not a new kind of force. The name merely indicates the direction of the force. That's it. Centripetal simply means center-seeking. It's just a directional label we slap onto our everyday forces. Depending on the situation, the centripetal force could be tire friction, it could be gravity, or it could even be the tension of a string if you're whirling a hockey puck on the ice.
And finally, the ultimate test. Part 6, Defying Gravity with Vertical Loops. Check this out. This is Allo Daredevil Diavolo performing his bicycle loop-de-loop stunt way back in 1901. For Diablo to survive and not just, plummet out of the sky at the very top of that loop, he had to maintain uniform circular motion. At that absolute peak, gravity is pulling him straight down towards the center of the circle. So he needed a very precise minimum speed to ensure that the required centripetal acceleration was exactly matched by gravity. If he goes too slow, gravity pulls him right off the track. But if he goes fast enough, his own inertia carries him through the curve, while gravity just acts as a centripetal leash, keeping him on the loop. But pushing these circular physics to the extreme comes with some pretty severe biological limits. 8.6. That is the staggering number of Gs, 8.6 times the acceleration of gravity that military Top Gun pilots can experience when maneuvering in tight, high-speed circular turns. Because this centripetal acceleration requires such a massive inward force, the blood pressure in the pilot's brain actively decreases, which risks a super dangerous loss of brain function. It is a stunning example of the human body slamming right up against the fundamental laws of physics. So as we wrap up our look into these extreme forces, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. Take a second and look around you right now. You aren't floating up to the ceiling, and you aren't sliding through the floorboards. So what invisible force vectors are acting on your body at this exact second? Think about the static friction keeping your chair grounded, the normal force pushing up against gravity. Our static, quiet surroundings are actually this complex, perfectly balanced web of frictional and gravitational vectors. And honestly, once you see the vectors, you can never unsee them. Keep looking for the physics in the extremes and, of course, in the everyday.